Hey guys, welcome back to the Bull Combo, your source for tech reviews, album reviews, and more. Today we're going to be reviewing Blessthefall's newest album, Hard Feelings. So stick around, I'll let you know my thoughts and opinions on the album and how it stacks up compared to their previous work. So I've listened to this album about 3 times now. I really tried to give it enough time to listen to all the songs and kind of feel things out and see the direction that this album's trying to go in. I think the first thing that's pretty obvious when you listen to this album for the first time is that the band has made a bit of a transition into more of the clean vocals. Clean vocals has always been a part of Blessthefall, but I feel like on this album they transitioned a little bit more toward the clean vocals and a little bit away from the screaming and the heavier vocals. Now, there's not a lack of it to the point that it doesn't sound like Blessthefall, but there is enough of a change to where it is noticeable. So I think that's probably the biggest change you can expect going from previous Blessthefall albums into this album, is just expect more clean singing and some softer sections and songs than some of their previous work. Now, that being said, the album still has some really strong riffs and some really great breakdowns, and the parts that are supposed to be heavy, they do a really good job of making them feel a little extra heavy by adding the scream vocals over top of it and adding those breakdowns in at just the right point. And I think maybe on this album they experimented a little bit more with the dynamic between the soft and the heavy. The soft parts are really, really soft, and the heavy parts can get pretty heavy. So in that respect, I think it differs a little bit from the previous albums that Blessthefall's come out with. I know in the lifetime of Blessthefall they've gone through some transitions and some changes in the style of their music. Not major changes, but just some refining along the way. Their last 2 albums were a pretty big step up from their previous work, and I think they've kind of solidified their style with those 2 albums. So this newest album's no different. It's still using that same formula that they've used previously. I think they just tried to experiment a little more with some of the dynamics in each of those and try to be a little bit more creative in the songs. I do have to say that after listening to the album a couple times, the songs are extremely catchy. That's one thing Blessthefall's always been known for. They've always written some pretty catchy songs. Their choruses obviously are one thing that's one of the big strong points of their songs, and this album's no different. Strong choruses throughout the entire thing. I think that the first half of the album is a little bit stronger than the second half of the album, and that may be because there's a lot more familiarity inside the first half of the album, because all of the 3 singles they released are all inside the first 5 songs. So in that regard, the first half of the album is a lot more welcoming. It's a lot easier to accept the first half of the album because it kind of feels more cohesive, because a couple of the songs have already been out, and you kind of feel like you have a vibe, understand the vibe of the first half of the album. Now, the last half of the album is good. It's very good, but what I think is it takes some listening to get used to. And I think that's just because there's no familiarity on the last half of the album, so there's nothing to anchor you to say, oh, I'm familiar with this song, what's next? So the last half of the album, the last 5 songs are very good, but they're going to take a little bit more time to grow on you because there's no familiarity inside of that half of the album. So if there was any complaint I had about this album, it would probably be that they just released all of the singles from the first half of the album, and the last half of the album is just all new songs. And that could be fine for some people. That might just be a personal opinion. But I like it when a band releases singles from throughout the album. That way, as you're listening through the album, you have points of reference to get back to remind you of what you're already familiar with the band. So aside from the transition to some cleaner vocals in certain parts and some softer clean vocals, there is a noticeable increase in some of the electronic sounds on this album. After I listened to this album, I went back and listened to the last 2 Blessthefall albums. I didn't listen to them all the way through, but I tried to listen to some of my favorite songs, just so I could see a comparison between the vibe of those albums compared to this album. And I did notice there's a lot more electronic elements on this album than in previous Blessthefall albums. Now, do I think they're going to transition to full trancecore or dancecore or anything like that? No, absolutely not. But I think it's very interesting to see that they added those electronic elements in. And I think for the most part, those electronic elements actually improve the songs. I think they enhance the songs. I don't think they take away from them. I don't think they make them sound cheesy. I think if anything, they add an extra element to the list for the listener to hear, an extra element of depth to the music. And so in that regard, I don't see anything wrong with the electronics they've added in here. It's not overdone. It's not like every song is constantly filled with all sorts of crazy samples and synth and stuff like that. But what is there is well timed, it's well placed, it's well done, and I think it lends itself well for the album and for the listener. So in terms of my favorite songs on the album, I would have to say that my favorite songs on the album are Wishful Sinking, Melodramatic, Cutthroat, Sleepless in Phoenix, and Tired of Being Underrated. I think those are probably the best songs on the album. Now, I don't really think there's any terrible songs on this album, so I wouldn't go as far as to say those are the best songs on the album, the rest suck, but I do find that those are probably the catchiest songs on the album. The one song I didn't really enjoy was the last song, Welcome Home. I don't really know what it is with bands including weird songs as the last song on their album, but I feel like the last song should be the most familiar side of a band. It should be the heaviest, most epic, most crescendo-ish, and the most familiar side of a band. So if you're gonna write a song that falls right in line with your style of music, falls right in line with the genre that you do, make that best song your last song. There's nothing wrong with having the best song on the album be the last song on the album. And I feel like a lot of bands nowadays venture away from that and they kind of get experimental and they try to add some weird song as the last song on the album. And I don't really think it plays out well. So aside from Welcome Home, I thought the album was really strong. I won't say it's quite on par with the last two Blessthefall albums, and that may just be because I prefer a heavier style of music, and they toned it down a little bit in certain parts on this album. So if you're a fan of Blessthefall, if you've been a fan of them throughout their discography, you're definitely going to enjoy this album. There's no doubt about it. It's definitely a Blessthefall album. It doesn't feel any different than any of the other Blessthefall albums, aside from maybe a little bit of a lack of unclean vocals in certain parts. Aside from that, the riffs are still there, the catchy choruses, the strong verses are still there. And if anything, maybe they just got a little bit more emotional in their songwriting, and maybe they're trying to touch on a little bit more personal topics in these songs, and that may be why some of the stuff is a little bit softer and maybe sounds a little bit more emotional. And that's something that probably in time will come out as they talk about the album and some of the stories behind the songs, etc. But until then, this is what we have to work with. And I think for their latest effort, it's a good effort. So overall, I thought this was a really strong album. If you're a fan of Blessthefall, I'm definitely going to recommend you check out Hard Feelings. It's available on all platforms. It's released today. So go ahead and check it out. Go out there, listen to it on Spotify, Google Play Music, iTunes, whatever your choice is. Make sure to support the band. It's always important to support the band if you enjoy them. That's how they continue and that's how they progress, and they can continue to put out new music for you guys. So don't forget, it's important to support bands like this. If you guys haven't gotten a chance to check out the lyric video I did for their first single, Wishful Sinking, make sure to check it out. I'm going to post a link to it down below in the description. I'll also post a link at the end of the video so you can check it out. I thought it was one of the stronger songs on the album. I really enjoyed it. It ended up being the first song on the album, which isn't really a surprise. It definitely has a Blessthefall intro type vibe to it. So if you haven't already checked out that video, make sure to check it out. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed this review. I tried to keep it short and sweet for you guys and let you know my thoughts on the songs and really what I enjoyed overall and where I thought they could have improved. Overall, again, this is a pretty strong album. Definitely check it out. Remember, the album drops today, March 23rd, 2018. Go ahead and check it out on any of the platforms it's available on, whatever your platform of preference is. And again, make sure to support the band. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you like the content here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell to get notified. I hope you guys have a great day, and as always, we will see you soon.